Hi there, and welcome back to the Soft Focus. I'm really excited to be with you today as we're tackling a topic that I've been thinking about a lot recently and is a little bit controversial. And today I want to talk to you about small family farms and industrial labels. We hear it all the time: buy organic, non-GMO, buy grass-fed. And all those labels can mean something. They can absolutely be a step in the right direction. But today I want to invite you to think a little bit deeper. What if it's not just about checking off lists on the package? What if it's about the spirit behind how the food was produced, the relationships behind it? What if the real nourishment we're craving can't be captured by a label at all? Labels serve as helpful indicators, but they fall short of capturing the full story of how the food was actually produced. In fact, in today's day and age, most of the time labels are co-opted by industrial mega farms, and they're just watering down the real intention behind the labels that they're using, meaning they're trying to meet the lowest qualification possible to be organic. They're trying to meet the lowest qualification possible to be considered grass-fed or non-GMO or free range or pasture raised or even regenerative. And don't get me wrong, so many small family farms use labels, and that's great. And that's not what I'm talking about today. I think it's wonderful when family farms are using labels and they're living up to the labels with integrity. But unfortunately, most of these labeling schemes are very expensive and they require a lot of regulatory hoops, and they're not made for the small family farm. They're made for the industrial businesses that are trying to basically mislead you into buying their products. I'm recording this from our farm office at Late Bloomer Ranch. There are piglets squealing outside my window. There's alfalfa breaking through the soil in the pastures. There's a cool breeze moving in as some rain is coming in for spring. And it's just got me thinking about this in-between season and about what truly feeds us, not just our bodies, but also our sense of belonging. Today's conversation is an invitation to think about that relationship, to think about that belonging for farmers, for consumers, and with the future that we're all trying to create together. Okay, so it's easy to think that if a product says all the right words, organic, heritage, pasture-raised, regenerative, that we're making the best choice. And of course, those words are a fabulous place to start, but a lot can hide behind those words. Last year, I had a scenario where another farm was copying so much of my marketing, word for word. It was a farm that I know for a fact that does not actually do the practices that we do here at Late Bloomer Ranch. But they were choosing to use the same terminology that we use. And they were describing what they do using this language. It was an interesting moment for me, a kind of wake-up call, because it just made me realize that buzzwords weren't going to save me. That trying to explain everything we do here at Late Bloomer Ranch with simply the terms of the day, like regenerative or rotational grazing, it was only going to get me so far. That instead, I had to rely on relationship building with my audience and with bringing our trusted clients and friends to the ranch, to what we do here, so that they could see with their own eyes what makes us different and how we value these words in such a deep way, and we try and live them with a bigger sense of integrity than just slapping a label and calling it good. Some farms, being pasture raised, just means that animals live in a pasture, and no one asks if that pasture is in good shape or how often the animals are rotated or what kind of condition the animals are even in. For us, when we say pasture raised, it means that the animals are moving multiple times every week during the grazing season, and that we're taking great care into making sure that those pastures are managed properly, that the soil's getting healthier over time, that the people who are moving the animals are paid fairly and respected for their work, and they are given fair work hours and terms and conditions. When we're looking at our flowers, we're not using plastic row cover. We're not just using a bunch of chemical fertilizers and herbicides to keep the natural bugs off the blooms. There's all kinds of things that go into what we consider to be high quality farming that won't fit on a single label. You can have a heritage breed, But it could be raised by a company that has no real connection to the land, no real bond with the animals, no real concern for the long-term health of the soil, the water, or the people. In fact, they may not even be connected to the heritage that is the heritage of that breed. This isn't about villainizing large farms or idealizing small ones. And I just want to be really clear that family farms, run by human beings are flawed like anything else. But when you have the ability to know and connect with that family farm and the people who run it, you have a better chance of actually understanding whether or not that farm is aligning with your values and what you want to put in your body. This is about recognizing that our food system has become expert at selling us stories and delivering something quite different. And so many of us, I'm sure that you can relate to this, can go to the grocery store. We can see a really cool piece of packaging. We can fall for the romantic story that the packaging is trying to convey without actually looking any deeper at what's inside the packaging or who bought the company that's creating that product. And so often this is a story of corporate consolidation, and it's not a story of new upshots in the food space who are doing things differently. Labels don't tell you if the farmers know their animals by name. They don't tell you if the farm workers are treated with dignity. They don't tell you if the soil is alive. They don't tell you if wild animals are welcome in that space. They don't really answer a lot of these bigger questions that people are starting to ask. I want to take a second to read you something from the USDA that they reported last year. It says, quote, "The organic label guarantees that certain prohibited substances weren't used in production, but makes no claims about animal welfare standards, worker conditions, or ecological impact beyond the minimum requirements." So something can be certified organic and be paying workers unfairly, be treating them unfairly. Something can be certified organic and not even be very oriented towards animal welfare. And unfortunately, that's the way most organic pork is produced. It's simply a conventional system with organic inputs. And this isn't to say that the label is meaningless. Again, when you're working with family farms that pursue these labels, they are usually more committed to the ethos behind them. I'm simply talking about when you go to a grocery store and you're looking at that plastic wrapped meat on the shelf, it's very easy to be misled. Even regenerative, one of our newest and most promising buzzwords that we all love to use, it's already being co-opted. I've seen massive monocrop operations that are using the term regenerative, but they're still spraying their fields with herbicide and pesticide and fertilizer. They're simply planting a cover crop once a year and reducing their tillage. Is that more regenerative than not planting a cover crop and not reducing tillage? Sure, but it's probably not what you, the consumer, are thinking of when you're buying this, quote, regenerative, end quote, product. Why does this matter? This matters because when we rely on labels alone, we outsource our discernment. So many of us are overwhelmed. We don't want to think about this stuff. We just want to get dinner on the table. It feels like every day we're being bombarded with bad news or with perspectives that make us feel overwhelmed, like we don't have any agency in our own lives. And we just like to be able to go to the grocery store and find something that's moderately adequate for our family. Well, if that's you, I'm with you, and there's no shame. And sometimes the best that we can do is buy a carrot with the Cal Organic label. But I still want you to take the time to think about some of these deeper issues and how you might take action in the short term to make them part of your life or to change how your buying habits are impacting what's on your dinner plate. Now, I'm not suggesting you need to visit every farm that grows your food. That's not realistic. But I am suggesting that we need to shift from a checklist mentality to a relationship mentality. And with this relationship, we can leverage these relationships to ask questions of your local farmer or of the meat producer that you're buying from, or even email me, to reach out to me, hello@latebloomerranch.com. You can ask questions like, can this company tell you the names of their farm workers? Do they have photos of the actual animals in the actual pastures? Or are they just using stock photos? Can they explain specifically how they're building soil health year after year? If they want to be considered regenerative or holistic or organic, there should be some recognition and awareness of soil health. Do they know the wildlife that shares their land? Or are they simply trying to eradicate all wildlife because it's inconvenient for their methods of production. Will they let you visit, or do they host regular farm days? We are going to start having a open farm stand on Saturday mornings at the ranch, and we're going to be really excited to show people through farm tours when they're here shopping our products. As always, I love to connect on Instagram. You can always check out my website. And when you're connecting with other farms, you can look for the same kinds of ways to engage with the work that they're actually doing instead of maybe a brochure that you get at the farmer's market. Farming isn't about production. It really is about relationship. Your relationship with the soil, with the seasons, with the animal, with the people who will eat this food. So much of what we get wrong now is that we don't value as a society the people who are eating the end product. And so if they're not healthier for consuming, that's not considered relevant. When you're in the relationship-based model, the relationship with the client is like the relationship with family. It's really important. When you get these relationships right, the rest will follow. Currently, our industrial farming reality doesn't value relationships at all. It's merely transactional. And that's kind of how we got here. So what do we lose when we lose family farms? When we lose family farms, it's so much more than a nostalgic idea. We lose a living heritage. We lose a living thread of care and stewardship for the land. I have some statistics for you, and they are stark. In 1935, so 90 years ago, there were about 6.8 million farms in America. Today, there are around 2 million, with roughly 2,000 acres of productive farmland lost every single day, mostly to development and consolidation into larger industrial operations. So we're looking at either paving over family farms to build some kind of like strip mall or housing development, or we're looking at wasting precious farmland, commodifying it into industrialization. And that could also be paving it over and building a factory. But it's not likely that the industrialized farm buying out the family farm is going to have the same level of tenderness and care for the land that they're working. The numbers don't even tell the whole story. What we're really losing is like a way of knowing and being. We lose the kind of deep-rooted stewardship that says, this land is my future. These animals are my responsibility. This community is my family. No industrial farm, no matter how many nice labels it slaps on its products, can replace that kind of relationship. Family farms live with the consequences of their actions. This is such a huge point to me, and one that has been deeply on my heart recently. Think about that for a moment. Like, how might that impact your decision making if you were on a piece of ground and you knew that you wouldn't get another crack at another swath of land if you destroyed this piece of ground? If you inherited 5 or 10 or 20 acres and you didn't have a plan B, you would treat that land differently. Industrial farms run by corporate shareholders, they may never even set foot on the land. And they're content to maybe sell it tomorrow if that's what the balance sheet tells them to do. It's not nearly as personal. And because it's not nearly as personal, the future isn't as valuable. Family farms aren't perfect, but when they're grounded in real values, in care, in humility, in connection, they offer something that no industrial model can mimic. There's a moment each spring when our pigs first go out to pasture, and there's like this dance that they do where first they're kind of timid and they're walking around slowly, taking it all in. And then suddenly they just kick up their feet, and it's almost like they're jumping for joy when they realize, like, holy mackerel, this is real. I get to run around and do this. No spreadsheet can capture that value, that joy, because it has no monetary value. And no quarterly report will mention a pig joy as a metric of success. Like, that just, it doesn't have value in the marketplace. But to me, it has real value. And I believe that that joy matters, that the joy of the animals, the joy of the farmers, the joy of everyone who gets to participate in a food system built on these values rather than extraction, that all matters. And I believe that it improves the health of the person eating the meat. I believe that that joy translates not just from the animal to the farmers, but also from the farmers to the consumers. And that joy matters because that joy is the absence of stress and pain and suffering. When family farms disappear, we lose this. We lose these moments. We lose the accumulated wisdom of generations working with specific pieces of land. We lose that knowledge passed down from farmer to farmer. We lose diversity. And I'm not just talking about biodiversity, but I'm also talking about diversity of approaches and diversities of culture and diversities of solutions. And these are all things that we're going to need as we move into an uncertain future. We're going to need more ideas, not fewer ideas. We're going to need more farms, not fewer farms. And we're really going to need the ethos of the family farm as a grounding force in this new world that we're creating. Corinne, why does this matter for me? All of this matters for you. All of this matters for you because when you eat food that's raised by hands and hearts that nourish the food with care, that translates to the food that you eat. The stress that's absent in the lives of these animals, the reverence that's built into the soil, the respect for human dignity along every phase of the process, all that shapes the energy, the vitality, the life force in the food that you're eating. And that's actually kind of fascinating because there's even some science emerging around this. Studies show that animals raised under stress have different hormonal profiles and nutrient compositions in their meat, milk, and eggs compared to animals that are raised in their natural environment. So there's actually like a tangible nutritional difference when you're eating animals that are raised in their natural environment, in their like family groups, outdoors, in conditions that are suitable for them, able to run around and play and kick their feet up. Like that can have a real tangible impact on the quality of the food. One study from Temple University found that eggs raised from pastured hens contain twice as much vitamin E and omega-3 fatty acids as conventional eggs. Another study showed that pasture-raised pork, particularly from pigs allowed to forage naturally on acorns, roots, grasses, tubers, what have you, tend to be higher in monounsaturated fats, particularly oleic acid, and that's the same fat found in olive oil. And so many of us regard olive oil as just one of the best fats available. So that's going to reduce your inflammation and risk of heart disease. People don't usually think of pork as a way to reduce heart disease, but when you're looking at pasture-raised pork that's raised properly, that's absolutely what it is. But beyond the measurable nutrients, there's something very subtle at work. And many of us have had the experience of eating a tomato from the grocery store and like being completely underwhelmed, even on the verge of disgusted, versus having the experience of eating a tomato raised in your garden that's still a little bit warm from the sun and it's perfectly ripe, and biting into it is like a spiritual experience. It brings you into the present. It's joyful, it's delicious, and it's like so much more nutritious. The difference isn't just about freshness or the variety of the tomato. It's about vitality. It's about life force. I notice this in my own body. When I eat food from farms I trust, like Late Bloomer Ranch and other amazing farms in my community, I just feel different. I feel more grounded. I feel more present. My digestion is better. My energy is steadier. My mood is more balanced. And it's just more fun, and the food tastes better. And it makes food preparation more of a joyful ritual, honoring myself, my family, and the place that I live, instead of just a chore. And I can't emphasize that enough. We've just made food this horrible chore where we're okay with opening up a plastic bag and shoving something hyper-processed into our mouths if it has the right label on the bag, instead of looking at it like this incredible ritual that we get to perform every day that affirms our personhood and our humanity and our connection to place. And that's what food raised with integrity by family farms gives me. This isn't mystical thinking. It's really a biological reality. Our bodies evolved eating food from intact ecosystems, not industrialized ecosystems. We didn't evolve with factory farms just minimizing production to the nub. We didn't evolve with these monoculture systems. We evolved with these diverse ecosystems and eating from all across the diverse ecosystem. We're designed to thrive on diversity, complexity, and on foods that lived full and vibrant lives. That was the norm. for thousands and thousands of years. Industrial agriculture is such a recent phenomenon. I hear from our beloved customers all the time, and by all the time, I mean at least once a week, that they just cannot eat conventional meat anymore. That since they started eating Late Bloomer Ranch and other similar meat from farms like ours, they just feel better. Their digestion's improved, their inflammation has gone down, and moreover, that they just feel disgusted by conventional meat. It's just not working for them anymore. And I have people tell me all the time, if they can't eat late bloomer, they won't eat pork. And as we move into beef production this year, I'm hoping that the beef that we're able to produce has the same kind of quality. I know that there are people who don't eat eggs when our eggs aren't available, and that there are people who won't put any other flours on their table. And it's not just brand loyalty, it's the way that it makes that person feel when they're consuming it. There's a real evidence. And these testimonials, at first I was so moved and kind of surprised because I thought I was the only one. That's why I started this business. But as they keep pouring in, I realized that there's something to it when your food is raised in this bigger system and in alignment with the values where every person and animal in this chain of succession is valued and honored. It shows up in how the food makes you feel when it's on your dinner plate. I think there's something really healing about knowing where your food comes from and trusting the hands that grew it, and about participating in a story of renewal rather than depletion. I feel so burdened in the modern age sometimes when I think about everything I do on a daily basis that just depletes, that extracts. Choosing where you source your food is a way that you can get out of the depletion cycle and into the renewal cycle, into the regeneration cycle, into the life-affirming cycle. You have so much more control than you think. When you choose to eat this way, you're not just changing your dinner, you're changing your relationships with the land, with the farmers, with the animals, and with your own body. And that brings me back to that essential point that if relationship becomes the central metric instead of labels, it's going to shift everything for you. It's going to be the thing that unlocks this higher level of health and peace and abundance and presence when we put relationships first. And we start thinking, who can I purchase from that I can build a relationship with? And if this brand is not available to build that level of relationship or knowledge or transparency, then maybe I should start somewhere else. You're participating in a healing that goes beyond personal health, even though it certainly includes that. You're also just participating in healing this fragmented food system. And that's something that we desperately need right now because it's not getting better. It's not getting better on its own. It needs people like you to plug in and do your part. So that's kind of the challenging invitation. What is my part? What is your part? And choosing food like this from family farms that live with these values, it's not convenient all the time. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We go to great lengths to try and make it easy to buy from us and to get it shipped to you. But I know that it's not as easy as going to your local supermarket that you go to every week or maybe even multiple times a week. It means that you might need to say no to certain things that you're used to. You might need to say no to ease. You might need to say no to convenience. You might need to say no to the thousands of little packaged tchotchkes on the grocery store shelves that you're used to nourishing yourself with in a moment of hunger and desperation. You might need to say no to all that and say yes to a meal plan and say yes to buying from your farmer's market or shopping online. You might need to say yes to looking a little harder. And I know that that's difficult, but it's really the path of maturity and it's the path of alignment, because if you have these values, the goal is to shorten the distance between your action and your values until eventually, hopefully, they are one. They are perfectly aligned. Now, I'm not there yet either. I'm still trying to close the gap. But the main point of this conversation is to look at ways that you can close the gap. I know all the objections that arise. I have a lot of them myself. I struggle with some of these too. Not everyone can afford to eat this way. Not everyone has access to these foods. Not everyone has time to research every bite of food that they eat. I get it. These are valid concerns. These are real concerns. I would just say, start where you can start. When things seem really big and really out of our control, it is so empowering to try and think of the smallest possible step that we can take and take that step. Then take 2 of the itty bitty steps, then 3, then 4, and then you're really making progress. But let's just start with the smallest change that you can make. What could this look like in practical terms? It could mean shopping at latebloomerranch.com or other ethical meat producers. It could mean finding one local farmer at your farmer's market who you could build a relationship with and try and assess if they're in line with your values. Maybe you're just buying one item from them a week if that's what your budget is allowing for, but you're taking the time to build that relationship. It could mean joining a CSA, community supported agriculture share. That is so incredible for relationships. Every CSA farmer loves to do the weekly pickup. They'll get to know you. You'll get to know your other CSA members. It's a great thing to do. Start a garden. Start a garden, even a small one. That's an incredible way to build a relationship with your food. You're building a relationship with yourself, with your little patch of grass, and with your dinner plate, all in one fell swoop. Learn to cook simple meals with whole food ingredients. So much of how we got here is that we didn't value cooking. And we became enamored with kind of fancy recipes and cooking with cachet and all that's great. I mean, I love some snobby food. I truly do. And I come from a long line of food snobs. It's also really nice to just know how to make a bone broth and know how to make an amazing chicken soup and know how to use the vegetable scraps to make your next round of bone broth. All of it's great. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Get to know the people who grow your food by name. So even if you're not going to the farmer's market, maybe it's your neighbor down the street who has a big vegetable garden, or maybe it's the person at your small grocery in town, not your industrial grocery, who's dropping off an order every week. There's so many ways to get involved and to get to know the people by name. Ask questions about farming practices, even at farmers markets, and share meals that you've made with others. This is such a big one that's like underrated in my opinion, because when you make something with love and you're carrying on that chain of reverence and care that we talked about earlier, then you share it with someone else. It has such a profound impact and they're going to feel that profound impact. I'm not an incredible cook. I'm really not, but people often compliment the food that I make them, even though it's incredibly simple, because it's infused with that economy of care and reverence and stewardship instead of this kind of hastily thrown together convenience food culture that we're in. If this feels overwhelming, start small, 1 meal a week, 1 basil plant in your kitchen window. The point is not perfection. The point is participation and awareness and connecting the dots back from what you do to what you value. Because each choice ripples outward. Each dollar is a vote for the world that you want to create. And each meal is a chance not just to nourish yourself, but the entire web of life that makes that meal possible, that makes your existence possible. That's how powerful food is. I want to leave you with an image that sustains me on difficult days. Imagine you're standing in a field, it's sunset, there's soil beneath your feet teeming with microbes. There's integrated livestock grazing in the distance. There's bird song in the air. The sun is setting and it's completely beautiful. The air smells clean and sweet. Now I want you to think about your grandchildren standing in that same field with soil beneath their feet that's even richer and more diverse. And the pastures even more diverse with more species of grasses and legumes and forbs. Healthier animals, still a beautiful sunset, even more birdsong. When I think about that, I am moved and restored because this work is not always easy and sometimes I want to give up. Sometimes it feels like everything we talked about today is too much to manage and too much to think about. But when I think about the potential for my children's children to inherit a more beautiful world, it motivates me. This future that we're dreaming about, it's not guaranteed, not even a little bit. It may not even be likely, but it is possible. And it begins with how we eat today, where we spend our dollars today, the kinds of relationships that we build today. So thank you for being a part of that future and for engaging with me in this today and listening deeply. And most of all, thank you for considering how your food choices might shift in response to what we've talked about today. Until next time, take care.